Hi, Dr. Dell. I've got a question here that I know I've been asked numerous times at various homeschool conventions I've attended, and that is, why is your child struggling with math?
Well, Debbie, that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, I've been asked that question now for about 60 years by all kinds of parents and adults, for that matter, that have struggled with math. And the answer is essentially two things. It's pedagogy and content. Now, I will tell you that probably 80 or 90% of the people that I've dealt with over the years have struggled with math to some degree or other. But once they get the right content taught to them in the right manner, those percentages reverse. Instead of being 90% not liking math, they become 90% that do like it. So content and pedagogy are really the keys. And I'm going to talk about pedagogy first, and that's how you teach math. Now, that's very important. Math needs to be self-paced. Every student learns at their own pace. And when you try to put them in a lockstep with other students, that creates big problems. It needs to be interactive. Math is something that it's like a sport. You need to really be doing things with it and be getting feedback all of the time. And then you need encouragement and so on from either the teacher or a coach. In fact, we talk about what I call the spike pedagogy. And if you go to craighane.com, and you see there I am, that's me, Craig Hane, and this is Triad Math. This is our belief. Pedagogy, how you teach math, and content are critical in determining the psychology of the student. And the student psychology is number one. They got to like math. They got to want to learn it. Now, if you go to this page and go down to the second tab and click on it, that will take you to the Spike page. And I actually have an 8-minute video there where I talk about Spike and explain it. And you can download a PDF and learn about it. And it's what I've just discussed here very briefly with you: self-pacing, interactivity, feedback, keeping score, and so on. Now, I also believe that math needs to be kinesthetic, and that means you need to do math. It's like a sport. You need to be doing it. You can't learn math just by listening to someone talk about it or reading about it. It's something you've got to do, and that means you've got to practice a lot. Now, the nice thing about that is what you got to understand is if you practice like a sport, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. This is very common. In fact, you're not learning math if you're not making mistakes. So what you want to do is you want to praise people when they're making mistakes because they're learning, they're doing something. And a lot of times people get the idea that mistakes are a bad thing, that makes them feel stupid or inadequate. And that's not how it ought to be at all. Mistakes are good. You're learning something. Now learn from your mistakes. Don't keep making the same one over and over, but learn from it and move on. And the more further you go in math, you're going to continue making mistakes. I've been doing and learning math for all these years, and I still make mistakes myself. In fact, when I do my videos, a lot of times I'll make a little mistake in it, and I leave it in. If it's a careless error that doesn't really impede their understanding, I'll leave it in. I don't edit it out because I want them to see that that's the human thing. You make mistakes. And so like I said, it's like a sport. Now you as a parent, you could be the teacher if you know how to teach math and if you know math, or you could just be more like a cheerleader or a coach. And that's very important too. If someone else is teaching your child, whether you've hired a tutor or you buy a program like our program or somebody else's program, you want to cheer them on and be sure that they're getting the feedback they need. Now, content's the big thing. The biggest problem we have in our schools today is our math textbooks are just really horrible. They're full of obsolete topics that shouldn't be there. They're old-fashioned. They got put in there 100 years ago. They don't have any value today, and they're difficult. Why teach your child something that they're never going to use or that they don't see any value to? Because indeed they won't use it, but it's difficult. That's silly. There's lots of good things that you can be teaching your child that he or she will use, and that's what you should be doing. The other thing is they put topics in prematurely. They put theory in, for example, that shouldn't be in there in the beginning. And that just gets students confused, discouraged. Again, they don't see the value of it. Indeed, there probably isn't value to them. We don't put any real theory in until after calculus, which is tier 5. Because only math majors really care about the theory. We want to make it practical. We want to make it intuitive. And we want to teach it in a way they can understand it and content that's relevant to them. Now, having said that about the content, then the next question that you probably have is, well, what content should I be teaching? Well, what I'll tell you is what we do. The content we teach is this. Now you can download a syllabus of this and see what we do. But we start out and we take the TI-30XA calculator, which is a less than $10 calculator. It's a wonderful tool. And we teach them how to use it because they're going to do all of their arithmetic with the calculator. Now, there's a controversy on that day. Some people, well, don't they need to know how to do it with pencil and paper? Don't they know the manual algorithms? My answer to that is no. It doesn't help them understand the concepts. It bogs them down. It's difficult. It takes a lot of time. And no employer will ever pay you to do manual arithmetic with pencil and paper. Back in the 70s, before calculators came out, we used a thing called slide rules and logarithm tables and trig tables. And that's what the engineers had to use. Well, when the calculator came out, that all went away. That all became obsolete. You don't see slide rules anymore. You don't see people using log tables and trig tables. And you don't see people doing square roots manually. You don't even do multiplication and division manually. You don't convert fractions into decimals and back again manually. The calculator does all that for you. So why would you want to do that manually? And I can assure you it doesn't help them understand the concepts any better. So this is how we start them, and they love it. It's kinesthetic. Now what we do when I teach them, I want to be sure they understand the rules of arithmetic. Remember, this is post-elementary. I'm assuming that they understand the number system, that they understand expressing numbers of the powers of 10, but they also understand the rules of multiplication and division, commutative law, associative. They don't have to know the names, but they don't know how it works. So we review that. We call it pre-algebra. That's 10 more lessons. So between the 16 calculator lessons, the 10 pre-algebra, 26 lessons, bingo, that's tier 1, and that makes sure they're ready to go. Now the way this works, by the way, if you don't know, is each one of these lessons consists of a video. For example, when I talk about rules of addition, it's a 10-minute video. On that video, I will explain to them what they need to know about that topic, and I even ask them to pause the video and work along with me. I try to make it interactive. Then they get a lot of exercises based on what they've just learned. And if they don't understand them, they go back and watch the video again, do the exercises back and forth till they understand it. Then we give them a quiz. They got to pass the quiz because it's 3 questions. They got to get them all 3 right. Then they move on. It's climbing a ladder. Why try to work on multiplication if they haven't learned addition yet, for example, and so on and so forth. Now this is what we call tier 1, Debbie, and I think any teacher could easily teach this, and that gets them started. But usually by this time, they're beginning to say, hey, I can do this. I like math. This is fun. Then we get into algebra. Now, algebra is something you've got to learn if you're going to solve problems in math using geometry. Geometry and algebra go together. It's a set of tools. But notice, this is not some 900-page book. In fact, I can't find any algebra book that just does what needs to be done for beginners. There's 10 lessons. This is all the algebra you need for practical math. This is what we teach adults in industry to do hydraulics and pneumatics and electrical and all of that. This is the algebra you need. It's really pretty simple algebra, and they learn it pretty quickly, and they enjoy it, and they understand it, and forget the 90% that is irrelevant to practical math in the beginning. Now, after algebra, we do geometry, and here's what we teach them in geometry. We're going to teach them about the things you run into. What are straight lines? What are angles? Triangles? The most important topic in geometry, by the way, for industry is similar triangles, believe it or not. That is, by the way, not what is emphasized in a regular geometry class. In regular geometry, they often emphasize proving theorems and things, and that's way premature. And we want them to learn about circles, and we want them to have blocks and cylinders and cones and all of that. So there's 19 lessons here in geometry. In fact, the 19th lesson tells them when geometry is not enough to solve any kind of a triangle problem. And triangles are the most important geometric polygon in industry and in the real world. And so in order to solve triangles, you need another tool. It's called trigonometry. And we have 8 lessons, actually 7 lessons in trigonometry that teach you everything that you need to know to solve any kind of a triangle problem. And in fact, the 8th lesson just tells them what's going to go beyond practical math. Now, algebra, geometry, and trig consist of what we call tier 2. And this now gives them the practical foundation they need. If your student is not going to go to college, if they're going to go to the military, if they're going to go out into industry and get a regular job like an apprenticeship or something like that, they know all the math they need. They're going to be better prepared and better trained in math than 95% of the people in this country today. I mean, this is really a very comprehensive program for practical math. And we call it tiers 1 and tier 2. Now, we'll talk in other videos and other questions you're going to ask me about what you do when you go beyond the Practical Math Foundation. But that's the answer, Debbie, to this question, basically.
Thanks, Dr. Dell. And about how long would it take a student to get through the Tier 1 and Tier 2?
Well, that's a good question. It depends on their background and how much they want to work. Most students are going to take about 40 to 60 hours of their time. We recommend that they study a half an hour to an hour in a given session in a day, and that they try to do it at least 4 days a week. 3 minimum, 5 is fine, probably no more than that. So 4 or 5 hours a week. And that usually means most of them will get through it easily in one semester. If they already know quite a bit of math, and some of our students do, as you know, we've had students go through it in 20 hours or 30 hours because they already knew a lot of it. We've had other students that, let's say we got 10-year-old students that didn't know any of it, and it took them maybe 8 hours to go through, and maybe it took them 6 months, and that's okay too. Remember, it's self-paced, and that's the important thing. You want to cheer them as they go. They're climbing the ladder, and they'll all get there. I've never had a student that would work at it fail to do it.
Thanks, Dr. Dell. I appreciate your answer.
Well, let me just add one last thing, and because a lot of the people listening to this will be homeschooling their children or helping their children. If you have a tutor or me or someone doing this for you, then you definitely want to be a good cheerleader, and you want to use both the carrot and the stick to get them to do it, because they have to work at it. It's like any sport. They're not going to learn it unless they work at it and do it. And in the beginning, they may have a little reluctance to do that. They'd rather watch a video, do a video game, or do things with their friends. So you've got to get them to do it. But if you cheer them on and give them that kind of motivation, then they'll be successful. I will guarantee it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, you're welcome, Deb. Now we'll go to the next question.
Okay.